We've been looking at different approaches to incorporating texture into our Illustrator artwork and drawings, design, etc. This time around we're going to consider the raster effects, and we're also going to combine that with some transparency marks and gradients. So it's going to get a bit complicated, but I think we'll be okay if we work it out together. Let's start off by having a look at a couple of the raster effects that are useful for transparency. I reckon we might just duplicate this artboard so we've got space to work. I'll select the background of my eyeball illustration and we'll come up to Effect and down to the Photoshop effects. So these are raster effects, not dynamic, not editable, or they are destructive. And we'll play around with the texturizer. So you can see that we can get some pretty effective sort of relief looking texture there with the texturizer. We've got a few different settings there. Brick, canvas, I think canvas is okay, and the sandstone is probably better. We can drop down the scaling to make it a bit more subtle. You can see the kind of tiling of this effect, so that's something to keep in mind. And the kind of relief, like how textured it is, like the light falling on that texture. You can see there's a light source top. I'll change it to top right and it slightly changes that texture. Just maybe zoom that up for you so you can see what's going on there. So what I don't like is the repetitiveness of it. So if you're using that, try and avoid, find a way to disguise that as much as possible. I'm going to click OK. So that's the texturizer, and oops, that is not what I meant to do. Okay, so I think I got the that zooming, screencasting under control. We'll click OK, and we've added that texture to our background there, which looks kind of nice. Good start. Let's add another texture to our eyeball here, and that's just a shape that I'm gonna take the stroke off that and apply it to this shape in the background here. So I might make it a little bit grey. Hopefully that kind of adds a bit of definition to this next bit of texture. And we'll go up to Effect, and we will, under Texture, choose Grain. So I find grain a little bit more subtle, I suppose. We've got a few different types of grain that we can apply. Sprinkles, soft, each have slightly different characteristics. I'm pretty keen on the stippled version, so we can increase that intensity, make it a little bit more prominent. I kind of like that one. Perhaps I would have pulled that back a little bit. Let's look at ways that we could sort of mask off our grain and just apply it in a tonal kind of way to create shadows and highlights and that kind of thing. And I'm going to use the stipple grain effect to do that. Alright, so I've got a new artboard here, and I want to make a shadow that, so that our eyeball is kind of floating above this background. A couple of things I want to do. I'm going to just delete that stroke and kind of change the personality of our eyeball a little bit, so it's a little bit less line art, a little bit more sort of planes forms. So we want this eyeball to be floating, so I'm going to create a shadow underneath the eyeball. Do that with the stipple effect. So let's start by creating an ellipse. And I'll drag out an ellipse like so and position it. If that was a shadow, maybe we'll change the color so we can kind of see it floating there. Next thing we'll do is I am going to create apply a mask, a transparency mask to that shape. So we'll open up the transparency dialog box here and click Make Mask. And we'll clip it so that we've got a white mask here, which means we can see that object. And then with the white mask selected, I'm going to draw another shape over the top. With that shape added into this combination of mask and object, I'm going to apply a gradient to that. So click on the gradient panel and I'm going to apply a radial mask there. And we'll come back to the settings of our radial mask, but let's apply some texture. We'll go up to Object, go up to Effect and apply our grain. So you can see what's happening there. We've got applying grain to that mask, and I'll blow that up just so we can see that, which is good. I thought our intensity was a bit much there, so I'm going to bring that back, bring the contrast back, something like that. I reckon is looking good. You can play with your settings. Click OK, and we can see now that our mask is having an effect on the object underneath and the grain there. So we've kind of got that blend. So that's really good, and we can now manipulate our mask underneath that by selecting the mask tool in the tool palette. So now we've got our mask handles. I'll just blow that up a little bit, and we can modify how our gradient is affecting the mask underneath. I'm going to rotate that around like so. Probably won't see any difference there, but changing the parameters, changing the size parameters here and stretching it out, I can kind of have it blending. Oops, it's rotating. I can have it blending both ways because I've got that rotate. Sorry, got that radial gradient happening. So that's looking quite good. Oops, don't want to move that just yet. We've just got to make sure that we have, when we've finished our work here, we've got our actual object selected, and now I can move that around. So I've created a nice stippled textured shadow underneath our eyeball, which I reckon is quite good. It's quite straight. Kind of adds a bit of subtlety and a bit of fall off to that shadow. Let's try it again, and we'll we'll just take it in a little slightly different direction. I'm going to put some shading around the edge of our eyeball here, and I'm going to click copy, Command C to copy that eyeball and paste it in front, Command F. And I'm going to change that color to a kind of a grey, because this is going to be my shading color. Maybe we'll make it darker to start with, and then we can pull it back later. So we'll click OK. Now on that grey color, let's apply our mask. We'll make that mask. We need to flip it by unchecking clip. So it's revealed all of It's revealed the grayness of our vector there. Now we need to work inside the mask, so select the mask there, and we need to draw another object inside the mask that can hold our grain texture. That's going to be this grey object here. I might make it completely black, completely white maybe. Go OK. So that's revealing everything in our combination of mask and object there. So let's apply let's apply a gradient to that, and I'm going to apply the freeform gradient like so. So we've got a range of different kind of markers that we can push around and apply to this space, this sort of arrangement. And I'm going to double click on these elements here and make them just either black or just white. So these are our kind of pointers. So I'll have the white ones over here. Oops, white. And so the white's going to reveal the shading, and then the black one's going to kind of take it away. So we can really kind of tailor our shading, customize it. Alright, once we've done that, we can go back up to Effect and apply the grain. That's how our grain's currently looking. I'm going to use the same settings as we did before. Click OK. And you can see our nice grain applied there. And we've still got our kind of gradient points here. So we can continue to customize that till we get something that we like. We can also apply the line mechanism, I don't know what the title for that is, which allows us to kind of draw lines between our points, and so we get like a much more defined gradient there. Hit Command and we could do the same thing with this one here, clicking to add points. And there we go. So finally, if we just go to our mask and click outside of our mask, we can probably recolor that color and sort of drop the intensity of that down and click OK. And there we go. There's our kind of custom shading using gradients, transparency masks, and also the grain raster filter.